Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us with Breath of Fresh Air. I am honored to host today. My daughter, Sherie Austin, will be speaking. She's our guest. And I have a little printout from her hubby. He did her bio for me, so I'm going to read that, okay? It says, Dr. Sherie Austin is a pediatrician in Gloucester County and has known a large number of county kids since they were newborn babies. She deals with all sorts of ailments ranging from serious infections to teen anxiety. And her dinner conversations often include describing strange rashes seen on babies. She does not shy away from any aspect of her patient's health and is the mental health champion for the Virginia chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Sherie has two lovely daughters, Ruby, who is 8, and Josephine, who is 7. Both girls are full of life. I can vouch to that. I'm their nana. Meaning that Sherie does not spend much time sitting down while at home. In addition to crafts and other activities with her kids, she somehow finds time to lead a Girl Scout troop and participate in parent-teacher organization events. Her hobbies include hiking, road biking, and traveling. She aims to travel as much of the world as possible, has a passion for well-designed luggage, and loves a jam-packed travel itinerary. Sherie was born and spent her childhood in Huntsville, Alabama. After attending medical school in Mobile, Alabama, she came north to the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. While there, she met her husband, Jay. After a couple of years working in Fredericksburg, she moved to Gloucester, where she has lived, worked, and attended Abington Episcopal Church since 2015. I give you my daughter, Dr. Sherie Austin.
Thanks.
Do it.
Opening prayer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now, Kathy, would you do opening prayer for us, please? Sorry.
Yes. And so good morning, and
Good morning.
thank you in advance to Sherie. This is the prayer of St. Francis. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me show love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love, for it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life.
Amen. Amen.
I guess it's my turn now. I have a PowerPoint, so I'm going to start that because I can't look at all y'all and talk at the same time. It's going to make me too nervous. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully, well, of course, it doesn't start where I thought it would. It makes this thing. Where's my mouse? There it goes. Natalie, say your Burger King line. All right.
Technical does not upset us.
There we go. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about finding God in unusual places. And thanks to my husband for writing that bio. I couldn't write it. I don't like writing about myself, but he's always very good at hitting the highlights. I am not really going to talk about where I am now, but how I got there, because I think that really highlights this this thing that I've always found is that we are used, things are used, and people are used by God to communicate with us and to show his presence and to guide us. And so that is kind of where I am going to take this. A couple disclaimers. I stole all the images you're going to see. So I don't know where I got them from. but they're just there. And I'm sorry about that for the copyright infringements. And the other thing is that there's going to be some animation in here, and that's really to kind of highlight how my brain works a little bit, to kind of let you into my world a little bit. So it's not too crazy, but just be prepared. Some stuff's going to move. So starting off, I grew up in Alabama, and I grew up in Huntsville. So big NASA town, lots of PhDs, lots of really smart people. And it was a really cool place to grow up. I had a very close-knit family, and we spent a lot of time with my grandmothers, and we spent a lot of time at church. I was the oldest child, oldest grandchild on my dad's side, second oldest on my mom's side. And so I always have felt a lot of responsibility and all of that kind of oldest child angst that you have about being perfect and being, the best. And like all of those things were part of me from the very beginning. I grew up Southern Baptist, and we were in church every time the doors opened. And so that was a big part of my life. This slide is kind of to just illustrate my long and winding road to Virginia, but there have been lots of places where God has spoken to me and where God has given me messages in different ways. And so all of that kind of started at church. This is the image I see when I think of church in my mind. And it's one of those things where it's like this hellfire and brimstone type of church where there's always a very long sermon where the preacher has pulled like one little sentence out of the Bible and like hammers that home. And this is the face that I remember. It's like people standing up there, yelling, sweating, telling me I was going to hell. So that's like the image in my brain of like church when I was growing up. And it instilled a lot of like fear of God and fear of going to hell and fear of messing up. And one of the most common ways I think that God speaks to me is through music. And this started way back when I was teeny. Now, I've heard people in Abingdon kind of make fun of this song, but the song that really like spoke to me when I was little is Just As I Am, because it's not, and it wasn't the whole song. And when God speaks to me through songs, it's never the whole song. It is usually like a phrase. And sometimes it's a different part of that song or a different phrase from that song, at different times of my life. But this is when I look back on my, childhood and growing up in church, this is the song that really spoke to me the most, because the thing that comforted me about this song with all of this, like, you got to do right and everybody is sinning all the time and we're always at risk of going to hell, is that, so there it goes. So, is just as I am, like God accepts me just as I am. And so that, every time I heard that in church, that would speak to me and be like, hey, no, you're hearing all this stuff, but this is the real message. Just as you are, I will take you. So that was really comforting to me. And it was helpful because when I was in church, I was asking a lot of questions. I was always very busy. I was always moving. I heard a lot of sit down, be quiet, stay still, don't do that. Especially on the church pew, like that was a really difficult time for me. And if any of you have seen the live video of our 10:30 services, or you've been in the church, you know that karma is coming back to me, because I experience that every single day with my kids. If we didn't know this at the time, but ADHD has been a big part of my life. And I bring this up because I wasn't diagnosed as a kid. In fact, they told my mom I didn't have ADHD. And that's really because I was a bright girl, period. Like, the understanding of ADHD has really come a long way from the 80s when I was growing up. And so this has always been there for me. I like this imagery because it kind of illustrates what a person with ADHD is going through. And it kind of, you have the parts about the fidgeting that I talked about in church and the trouble focusing. But it's all these other things underneath, and it has been this undercurrent in my life that I haven't really recognized for a long time. And so this is just to kind of highlight, like, this was going on in the background the whole time I was growing up, my entire life. I see a lot of kids with ADHD, and I treat a lot of kids with ADHD now in my job. It's a really big part of my job. And something I try to do is to help parents understand this kind of thing, because when I was preparing for this talk and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it, this started to come up a lot. And this kind of, I've had a year to plan this talk, by the way. I was supposed to go last year and it didn't happen. But so I've been thinking about this for a long time, and it's really been kind of enlightening to look back over my life and kind of figure out what's been going on and where God has been talking to me. And I think he's, in some ways used my ADHD to kind of help me along and to guide my paths in different ways. And so I'll bring that back up too. But this is all going on in the background. And so it really kind of also explains why music is such a big part of my life and how God has used that for me. A little insight into my brain. There's always a radio going, and there's always a song playing. It's not usually the whole song, it's usually little snippets, but it will change based on what I'm doing. My husband will tell you that I have a song for every situation, and I really do. And it's because all of this information is kind of floating around in my brain. And when something happens, one of the best ways I process it is through music. And God has used that little quirk I have to really speak to me in numerous occasions. So kind of moving on from this, I grew up, this is World Song Camp in Alabama. And my sister and I grew up going to this camp. This is the Vespers area. So when we went there weren't all these boys here. Like I said, I poached all these pictures. But, one of the growing images in my head as I grew, as I look back at this time, was this space, and this area is where God really spoke to me through song. And it was a huge part of camp. I ended up working at this camp, and it continued to be a huge part of this of my experience there. And it really helped me to grow closer to God, and in many ways it helped me to examine my faith. It was where I started to figure out that I probably wasn't Southern Baptist, but I didn't know what I was. But I knew that I wasn't like really lining up with what my church, the culture of my church, and what a lot of the things I was learning there. And so when I could go to camp, I would be able to look out from this Vesper space, and you can't see it in the picture, but behind the Vesper space, there's a mountain, and so the sun would like set over this mountain, and you'd be there at sunset, and it's this beautiful experience. And it really was a time when God would speak to me through songs like this. So Sanctuary is a song my sister and I sing it all the time. We sing it to our kids now. And it's really like anytime I think of camp, this is the song that I start to sing in my head. Another way that God talks to me, and I think everybody kind of has these, they may not identify it as God speaking to you, but we have these like moments, and it's where like everything else stops and you're kind of in this presence of God. And one of the first ones I had that I remember, it was at this camp. And so it was when I was a counselor there, but we were walking back from this candlelight service, and every Thursday night at camp, you would have candlelight service, and you would walk back in the dark with the candles to your cabin, and then you'd have this silent time with your kids at the cabin. It's beautiful. And I can remember walking back, and I was with my cabin, and I never stopped walking, and there was, trees on either side, and the sky up top with all these beautiful stars, and just suddenly everything stopped around me, and I was in the presence of God. And it was just like this really amazing moment. And I don't think there was any kind of push in one direction at that point, but it was at this moment where it's like, hey, I'm still here. I am thinking about you. You're special to me. And so it was a really wonderful. And ever since then, you kind of are looking for these moments, and they kept happening sporadically through my life when I needed it. Being a camp counselor was a really hard time for me as well, because it was a choice between spending my summer at camp and spending my summer training for soccer and in college. And I eventually got kicked off the soccer team, which was this huge blow to me because that had been my identity up until that point. And so having these songs, having these experiences, it was huge for me because it was this reminder that someone bigger, something bigger was in charge of my life and was looking over me. And it was at camp that I decided I wanted to be a pediatrician. I had thought my whole life I was going to be a vet, and I was floating in the pool one day on a weekend there, floating in the pool. I could still see the mountain. It's very close to the Vesper spot. And all of a sudden, I knew with certainty that I was going to be a pediatrician. And that's another way that I find God communicates with me, is just these moments. It wasn't quite like the candlelight walk, but it was another moment where everything kind of like stopped, and it was like, oh, this is what's going to happen. And so from that point on, that was my sophomore year, between sophomore and junior year. And so from that point on, I was already a biology major, so I was already kind of on that path, but I started looking into the MCAT and how you got to medical school. And no one in my family's a doctor. So I did that on my own, and I was looking on my own. And so it was kind of this harder path that I started on. My school was not really set up for pushing people into medicine. And I ended up, not getting into medical school the first time. It ended up that I was at home for 2 years. And I was a phlebotomist, which taught me lots of great lessons about patient interaction. I was home with my parents. We got along fine. That wasn't a problem for me, but it was kind of this like limbo period. And by the way, all these like slides with all this text, these are songs. So this is If You Want Me To by Jenny Owens. And so this came out the year I graduated high school, and it has always been this song that kind of, if I am like in there's indecision or something, like this is a song that I go back to all the time. But it really was something that I used in that time where I was like, okay, am I going to get into medical school? I'm studying for the MCAT again. This is where ADHD comes in again, because I'm not good at test taking. And one of the reasons is like, I can't focus for the 4 hours you need to focus for the MCAT. And when you don't like something, when you have ADHD, like let's say physics, you really you struggle to study that thing. And I ended up like falling asleep a lot when I was trying to study, and looking back, it had to do with like my ADHD and procrastination and all those executive functions that are hard for me to come by. And so this time was really kind of difficult for me in a way that there was just a lot of unknowing. And so, again, like I said, like things started to stick out to me from these songs, and I would hear this, and I would hear this line over and over again in the song, and it would really, it would help me to keep going. And there are plenty of other things along the way that helped me keep going, but a lot of it, when I look back, these are the things that start playing in my head. This is the radio, it was playing in the radio in my head right now when I think about this time in my life. And things did look up for me. I did get into medical school. I ended up going to the University of South Alabama. This is another song. This is everybody knows this song. It is Well With My Soul, but this is the Audio Adrenaline version. So there's some verses left out, because this is the song that I hear in my head. And this came out about the same time. This was a song that I sang at camp a lot in my head. So again, this is like the undercurrent. There is these songs and these lyrics that help me to keep going and to persevere and to kind of keep going towards my goals. I got to medical school. This is South Alabama. This is the building I remember. We took our white coat picture on those steps. Right inside there is the gross anatomy lab where I met my little medical school family. And it was a hard time for me. I kind of moved away from God at this point, and there was a lot of questioning and doubt. And if you're at all familiar with the Southern Baptist Church, that's not okay. So like I would go home and I would have all these questions. I would argue with the people in Sunday school, and I know people at that church were worried about me at that time. And when I was at school, there wasn't a lot of church. I didn't go to church a lot. I was really tired a lot of the time. I was hanging out with my friends and like partying, and it was I kind of got away from who I was. I did have these wonderful friends, and I did have that support, but there were a lot of ways where I was struggling. Self-confidence was a huge thing. I truly believe that if you have ADHD, everyone who has ADHD hits a wall at some point. And I hit my wall in medical school, and I sort of like forgot how to study, and it was a really hard time for me. I really, really struggled, and there weren't a lot of people like attendings and doctors and people within the school who were supportive in a way that was helpful to me. And so I kind of felt alone in that struggle. But I also, my friends introduced me to different music. Now, this is Evanescence, and I loved Evanescence before medical school, but I really listened to this album a whole lot during medical school. I also listened to some Rage Against the Machine. They helped me to my friends helped me to start building some self-confidence. I couldn't put that song in there. There's some expletives, but I will tell you that song, the one that I can't put up here, really does stick with me because it helps me. I got to go back. It really helps me uh, to remember that, yes, God is in charge, but like I'm making some decisions for me, and I need to be confident in my decisions. And like, I don't have to listen to all the voices around me all the time. And so, medical school was difficult, and I don't know if I can go back. There we go. In a lot of ways, but God used medical school to get me to the right place. So in medical school, you can do rotations away. And I really thought that the place that I was meant to be was Portland, Oregon. I can't remember why now, but I went there in August of my 4th year of medical school. And I did a hematology oncology rotation, a pediatric hematology oncology rotation. They have this huge ward, and it was absolutely miserable. And I tanked hard, like so hard. I was not good at it. And I found very quickly that I was overwhelmed. And if you have ADHD, it's very hard not to jump right into paralysis if you are overwhelmed. And when you jump into paralysis, you have a hard time doing anything. And so that was the month that I got back my step 2 scores. So in medical school, you take these licensing tests. In step 2, I got a lower score than I did on step 1, which devastated me. I thought I wouldn't get in anywhere. And my advisor was not helpful when I came to him, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the thing. He just was not supportive. And I also had to write my my statement for my applications for residency, and I was struggling with that too. So there were all of these stresses on me. My dad got really sick while I was out in Portland, and so it was a really bad time. But through all of that, the fellow that was on HEMONC while I was there was a guy named Jason, and he had just finished being chief resident at UVA. And I think they all suspected that I was not going to be invited to interview in Portland. So they were really kind to me. But Jason was like, "Hey, I think you would really love UVA." Now I knew I didn't want to be in Alabama. But I'd never considered Virginia. So he's like, "You should apply there." And so I did, and I ended up loving it. When my dad and I went to the campus, I knew that's where I was going to go for residency. Like, it was another one of those like cool moments where I just knew that was going to happen. And so God used this random guy in Portland to direct me to Virginia. And so, when I got to Virginia, I residency was almost even harder than medical school. And I had this gigantic fear of public speaking. I had this lack of feedback from my attendings. That pediatricians are very kind most of the time, but that often means that they are not good at telling people when they're doing something wrong. And it's really difficult to learn if in the moment, and to prove that you can be better if you're only told what you did wrong at the very end. So I was kind of blindsided by the fact that they didn't think I was doing well in residency, and that they didn't think I was prepared. Another part of that is that when you are sleep deprived and you have ADHD, your symptoms are magnified. And I was struggling hard with the 30-hour call schedule and all of that. And again, like during medical school, I'd kind of moved away from God and church and all of the things that could have been supportive in that way. But when I got to medical school, residency, there was a Bible study. And one day that Bible study didn't meet, and a couple of girls and I met at my friend Amy's house, and we started our own Bible study. And so that's where Francine Rivers comes in. I know y'all are wondering, but this book, all of us in my little prayer group read this book, and I don't know if I can recommend it. It's a little bit hard to read. It's a retelling of Hosea, and none of that is really pertinent to this story, except that in that story, the girls talk about a hat box and keeping your worries in a hat box. And I have done that since I met these girls. And this hat box has been huge for me. I don't use it as much now as I used to, but I did when I was preparing for this look back. And what's incredible is that God used this silly little hat box to speak to me in so many ways. And when I was looking back, these are what's in the hat box, these little pieces of paper. And so I often would write a prayer on one side. Yeah, prayer on one side. And then on the back, I would write a Bible verse or something I had read, song lyrics, all those kinds of things, because my brain kind of takes all that stuff and mushes it together to process what's happening. And so many times I was looking through and I'm like, where did I get this Bible verse? Like, it's not one that I repeat to myself over and over again, but it's another way that God speaks to me. He like pulls these words out. One of my favorite verses that pertains to the Bible itself is the one where God is talking about, or the Bible's described as God breathed or God inspired. And I truly think that, that is a huge way that God uses his book to talk to me. I mean, we all know it is not literal, and there's, I really enjoy thinking about all the ways that the Bible came together and who wrote it and all of those kinds of things. I really enjoy our like Episcopal 101 classes at Abingdon, because it goes through all that background, and it talks, about how things came to be, and knowing all of that, and we all wrestle with that. I think that every time I wrote one of these little cards, it was kind of a reminder, like, hey, God's speaking to you through that book. God's speaking to you through C.S. Lewis. He's speaking to you in so many different ways. And, a big part of my residency was deciding whether I wanted to go through with it. I was in a really dark place in my second year of residency. A lot of things happened in my family. I was still kind of struggling with the fact that people didn't think I was good enough. And I had a cardiology rotation, and there's this attending, Dr. Paul Mathern. Everybody was afraid of him. Nobody liked him. And I remember sitting in the cardiology workroom and getting a phone call that said, hey, you're going to be with Dr. Mathern tomorrow. You're going to Culpeper together, just the two of you. And so I was like terrified. This was right at the height of me struggling with whether I wanted to still be a doctor, if I thought I could, do this thing. And I was terrified of this man. And that ended up being my most perfect day in residency. I did study beforehand. We have this amazing cardiology textbook, and I studied it before I went, and I got every question right that he asked me. And I was able to read every EKG. It's amazing, but God used EKGs to speak to me, and He used this really scary guy to speak to me, and we had a great day. We went to a wine tasting afterward. I somewhere still have the wine glass from that day, because it really was the turning point for me, and it was really the time when I was like, okay, I can do this. And one of the reasons is that after that day, he emailed my program director. I don't want to cry, but he told her I had potential and that we had a good day. And no, I had not gotten any positive feedback from people. And to get it from this super scary guy was really huge for me. So it really pushed me through. And it was really incredible that God could use this not so scary man actually to help me. And he ended up being he wasn't like an official advisor for me, but it seemed like anytime I was struggling again, or I had a really terrible time in the PICU, he would show up. We would be walking out of the building at the same time, or I would see him at the coffee cart in the cafeteria. He kept appearing at the right time, and I know God used him to help me out. I think it's huge how we can be affected by people who aren't necessarily, it's not the person you would think of. That happened several other times. So one of the chief resident above me, she got me playing co-rec soccer. She is also the one that nominated me to be chief resident. And I can tell you, by the end of my residency, I did not want to be chief resident. I didn't want to stay there another year. I didn't think I was right for the job. And I ended up being chief resident somehow by default. But it was an amazing year. That soccer team is how I met Kirsten Dexter, who helped me to meet my husband during the last month of my chief resident year. So if I hadn't been there for chief residency, if I hadn't truly suffered through that year, it was a terrible year. Lots of things were going on at UVA. It was bad. But if I had suffered through all of that, I never would have met Jay. And Jay is the most amazing person I've ever met. Gosh, I hate crying in front of people. But Kirsten is an atheist, and God used her to guide my life to where I am now. And, I never had any doubts about Jay. I knew I loved him on our second date. I knew I was going to marry him, but it was complicated. He had just gotten divorced. He had these almost preteen teenage girls, and that was scary to me. And during my first year in Fredericksburg, I went to Rwanda, and this was my third trip to Rwanda. I'd been twice during residency, and I spent a month in Rwanda, 6 hours from Kigali, in this little teeny place on this beautiful lake, and it was amazing. I loved going there, and part of me, had always thought, well, am I going to be working in a place like this? Am I going to be going as a missionary somewhere? And that thought of missionary had changed and morphed over the years, but it was always in the back of my mind. So I love Indigo Girls, and I listened to it a lot during residency, and so when I was in Rwanda, and as I was thinking about going to Rwanda, this song, Closer to Fine, is one of their most famous songs. But this part of this verse kept coming to me, and like, and what am I afraid of, and at first I thought it was, pertaining to Rwanda, but I can tell you the whole time I was in Rwanda, me and my friend that I met up with there, we're talking about my relationship with Jay, and looking back, I think it had more to do with like, are you afraid to be in this relationship? Are you afraid to commit to this life and this man and everything that comes with him, which I hadn't prepared for in my mind. And of course, we did get married, and we lived happily ever after in Gloucester. But I wrapping up, like, I think that there have been times of doubt, times where I've been farther away from my faith and from God than others. But through all of it, God has used so many different tools and so many different people of so many different faiths and lack of faith to guide me and to keep me on my path and to support me and to help me along and encourage me. And it continues today. Like, my poor husband, like, there are songs that I will listen to over and over again because they're speaking to me in a specific way. There are times when, just recently, I like revealed this thing to this person that I hadn't told anybody else, and I don't know why I did it, but it ended up that my friend called me, and we were in kind of this, she and I were in kind of the same situation, and it was like, wow, we got there because your brother told you this thing, and it was really amazing, and it was totally God using two people, not just one in that moment, to not only support me but help me to support my friend as well. So yeah, that's my talk. This is I found this quote. This is, again, just this morning, God using these things. This quote I wrote down. I try to date these things. I wrote this quote down on October 11th of 2010, and I read it this morning, and I was like, gosh, this is this is something that is pertinent to me now. Like, I think we all kind of look for ourselves, but if we look for Christ, if we're looking for, we're seeing him, you're going to find him, and everything else will be thrown in. So thanks for letting me talk. Stop sharing now.
I can relate with Sharon.
I want to say thank you. I have been sitting over here crying the whole time. I don't know if you can see who is joining us, Sherie, but your sister is with us.
Okay.
I can't hear you.
You're muted. Let me unmute everybody.
Hold on, we're going to unmute everybody.
Y'all check
I
and
said
make
I
sure-
can see her, and she's been texting me this morning. So
Well, I'm very honored to have both my beautiful daughters with me this morning and with the Breath of Fresh Air group. And I just want to thank you for sharing everything with us. I learned a few things that I didn't know about my daughter.
Right.
But that's okay. That's okay. I'm very proud of both of them. And Sherie, very proud of you and how God has used you and worked in your life. And you are where you need to be now.
agreed.
So, are we gonna break out in sections?
I don't know if you want to break into small group, or do you want to kind of
Yeah, no,
generally?
I really like that part of this whole thing.
Your
My
question.
question was, how is God? How have you found God in unusual ways? Like, how has He spoken to you in an unusual way?
Okay, I'm going to try this because I've never worked from this location, but we have 20, without counting of the 3, 4, 5. We have about 15 people outside of this room, so I'm going to ask you to put maybe 4 people in a group. See if I can remember how to do this, and we'll give ourselves, I don't know, 5 to 8 minutes to see where we are.
If you can't get it to work, Terry, I can see breakout rooms here. I might be able to do it too.
Wait. Wait.
Can you find it, Terry? See. Do you want me to try? Let's see if I can do it. Yeah. Okay, I think I feel like I made some breakout rooms.
Yeah,
Does
it says
anybody?
we have, but it's not telling us how to assign them.
Hmm. Well, I mean, we can just talk,
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, let's just do that.
but it's
I
not
don't know.
working.
Okay,
That's okay.
we'll close that out.
We'll work on that for next time.
Okay. There we go. Well, I love the fact that you go to music for a lot of your inspiration. And God talks to me through the radio. It seems that every time, and I know I've shared this in other sessions, something really big will happen and I'm all discombobulated and I get in the car to go somewhere, turn on the radio, and the song is what I need to hear. The time that our engine in our boat got flooded because we'd left a opening to the boat and the water came in and went over the engine. And I was hysterical. I was like, oh my God, we're getting ready to go cross country. Now it's trying to do the rooms. Crazy. I'm going to close that out, okay? Or do you want
I
to?
closed it.
Okay. Because it's right in the middle of your face. There you go. And it's flooding down in Texas. And that was the song that came on. And I just started laughing. I said, okay, it is, but we'll get through it. And that happens to me more times than I can count. And I told Tom, I said, I need to just keep a little notebook in the car. And when that happens, I'm going to go, this was the song, this was the situation, because it's phenomenal. That's my bit.
Terry, I agree with you. Helen. Music has been my life, and it does speak to me. I had a very interesting thing that happened, and I'm known for it now. When I worked in intensive care, I was doing my rounds that morning, and I knew that we had a couple of patients that were going to code. And I looked at the secretary, there was no music or anything on, and I said, turn up the radio. And I said, we need some Rock of Ages or something this morning. And she looked at me and she turned it up, and it was Rock of Ages. And all of a sudden the bells went off. Ding, 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 ding. And she said, oh my gosh, this is unreal. And I said, God just speaks to me through music, and I'm constantly listening to songs that touch my heart. I also see God in the faces and the eyes of people, the young children, the innocents, the babies, the older people, and their eyes, and their, especially, people with dementia, and they're looking in the distance. So I really appreciate what you shared this morning, and thank you. I love being here.
So, Sherie, thank you very much. I was not at all surprised by your presentation from having known you professionally. It was not a surprise. It was wonderful to hear you, and you do have a good handle on public speaking.
No.
I don't know whether that was the walking through the fire part, but I would say you're very gifted. I, so don't discount that. And for those of us who are completely tone deaf, yes, there are other ways that God speaks to us. It can be through physical things. For me, it has always been sequence. How often do you find sequins? Just think about it. But for me, sequins have shown up at the most incredible times in my life. So our senses are here for a reason, and some of us are gifted in some, like you are in music, or others of us who are not, it can be in other things. So thank you so much. This was wonderful. It really, you spoke to me so much.
Hi, Sherie. This is Pat McMillan, Terry's sister, Ty's aunt. And I just appreciated hearing about your journey so much. Physicians are held in great esteem in general in our society. And I think it is wonderful that you could share your struggle getting into medical school, the path you had to follow to become a physician, and that it wasn't a smooth go and you were challenged at every turn. And I think it's got to inform the way you approach your patients and their parents, because you're not floating above everybody else with I'm a doctor, I was always meant to be a doctor, I did it all. You fought to become a doctor, and you questioned it, and you are one. And people aren't usually so forthcoming with their struggles, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I do think that my journey informs the way that I treat my patients. Just the struggles that I've had. Terry can tell you. I tell stories, and I of my struggles, of my crazy children, and the things they've done. Like, because I think that it's helpful for people to know that I'm human too, and that I'm, especially with ADHD. Like I said, I see a lot of ADHD, but I think it is important that the parents understand where the kid is, and I can use my journey to show them that. And my journey is always in the back of my mind, and it really guides how I speak to people in the office and how I interact with people, and not just my patients, but like in the office. Like I've learned over the years that if people will leave me alone, I do just fine, even better than they expect, right? Like I can meet people's expectations if you're not like right on top of me all the time. And so that's how I try to approach, the staff at my office, and how I try to give and I'm not nearly as good at it with my kids, but I try to give them some space too to learn. And I think that God uses all these things to help us be better at our job, to so that we can't. I truly feel that all these things that my journey has helped me to be the kind of doctor that I am, and I, I hope that it does help people. And I talk a whole lot, and so at this point, but I do it because I hope that it helps people to see that there is hope, there is light in the tunnel. Like, if I've met some challenges and I've overcome them, like your kid can overcome them too. Like, it's hard being a parent. Let me tell you how hard it is for me. Like, we're all in this together. And so I try to, as I'm learning more, I try to help my parents and families learn more too.
Cherie. So it's, oh, no, I'm gonna let Peggy go. Go ahead,
Hi,
Peggy.
Sherie. Hi. I'm a retired speech therapist, and I worked with in the elementary school. So your PowerPoint for the ADHD was just when I think about all the children that I had. I worked with special needs children and the regular population, and it's just amazing all those points you put up. And I know some adults that are ADHD as well, and it's just, and people just form their own opinions of it. But what you had there was just a lot of insight into what it really is all about, and what society thinks it is. And over the years, I was a teacher for 40 some years, so that and it's ever changing. And then there's the medication part of it too, and all of that. So, but for you to overcome all that, I think that's just amazing. Thank you.
Natalie, do you want to say something?
So I was making some notes. It's a couple of things, well, lots of things, but two things I can't remember exactly where, but I wrote down um thin places. Um, and there were a lot of thin places for you, things that were God shown through, and it was a thin place. Um, I also have had music throughout my life, but one of the things about me is when I'm listening to popular music, I never really listened to the words or cared about the people who were singing or performing. It was, I liked the melodies and I just liked the song, I liked to dance to it, but I never really listened to what, because artists who write songs, they do write from the heart, and they
Mhm.
they write from their personal experiences. And I would just sort of cannibalize their talent, but not really appreciate where their talent was coming from. Um, and the thing about college and not being churched, yeah, because we've talked. I've been to Huntsville. I was raised Baptist, and yeah, when I got to college, church just kind of went out the window. Um, one of the experiences when I went in the military, church was the one place we could go where we always had to take your hat off in an indoor, but you could kind of relax. Um, it was a thin place. It was just like, even if the drill sergeant was there, you know, you were in church, so you could kind of relax. So anyway, but thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Is
And
there
all those
anyone?
songs you mentioned, I try to play those on the piano. Not well, but they're uh, too many black keys. But I work at it.
Anyone else?
There's one other thing I wrote down in my notes, choice paralysis. I had to Google that. I didn't know what that was, so I looked it up, and it's very interesting. Yeah, that was part of the ADHD that you had
Yeah,
mentioned.
ADHD is this incredible thing. I mean, we know so much more about it now, and there's this better understanding, which has been really, really helpful. And there's, it's so funny because I'll be in a room and I'll be like, oh yeah, there's this thing. And they're like, oh my gosh, that is exactly what my kid does. That's exactly what my kid does. And I'm like, yeah, because it's all a part of this thing. And um, this way that the kid's brain is wired, the way that our brains are wired. There's lots of women who are being diagnosed as adults because their kids are being diagnosed. And I had to start treating ADHD before I was like, okay, convinced, like, okay, yes, this is me, this is me, this is me. I mean, if you look at a Vanderbilt, like I'm all of them. And that's the screening questionnaire. But you talked about medication. I think that like it gets a bad rap, but like I medicated because I figured out that like I had nothing left to give my kids after work. I was so overstimulated and overwhelmed that I was angry with them for being kids. There are so many aspects of this that are maybe hard to grasp, especially if you're neurotypical, but it does and can be a superpower later on in life when you can harness all the good aspects of ADHD, when you can figure out how to cope with some of the harder aspects of it. And it's a constantly moving goal as well. And so, it looked like I said, preparing for this talk, it like really showed me how the way my brain is wired gave God just more ways to speak to me and in different ways, just using that different wiring and using all the little quirks and eccentricities. Like, sure, not all of them were positive, but it's incredible how God speaks to me just the way I am, just as I am, and uses that to help help get me through and to help me process and be encouraged in harder times.
Thank you, Sherie. We appreciate you being here. And I want to say, even though you didn't speak last year, it was worth the wait.
Indeed.
Worth the wait.
Do you get the feeling that this was the time that Sherie was meant to speak?
Yes.
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 Well, it was.
Yes.
She's my son's pediatrician, and she's awesome. And she takes care of our whole family every time we go to see her.
Sherie, could you send a link to that diagram of the that you were just talking about? I thought it was very interesting, and I'd love to be able to share it.
Thanks, Helen.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So
Are you going to
there's
send
no,
the link through to everyone? Is it going to be posted? This is Melanie.
I'll send it to Terry so that
Okay.
she can put it out. Yeah.
Okay. And thank you so much. I mean, it's so much I have to say, and I know we're getting ready to get off. I'll have to speak to you, but amazing. As someone who's newly diagnosed with ADHD, it makes so much sense later on. Just thank you.
Awesome.
So again, thank you everyone for joining us this morning. Terry is going to dismiss us in prayer, and I pray that you all will have a blessed weekend. Terry?
And we'll see you in February.
Yes, see you in February.
Okay, this is from one of my favorite people, Teresa of Avila. May today there be peace within. May you trust that you are exactly where you're meant to be. May you not forget the infinite possibilities that are born of faith in yourself and others. May you use the gifts that you have received and pass on the love that has been given to you. May you be content with yourself just the way you are. Let this knowledge settle into your bones and allow your soul the freedom to sing, dance, praise, and love. It is there for each and every one of us.
Amen.
Amen.